From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I am Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. Media mogul Oprah Winfrey is urging Americans to embrace common sense by voting for Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz. The registered independent was speaking at this week's Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Winfrey emphasized the importance of decency and respect in the upcoming election. She criticized Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and his allies for promoting division and misinformation. She highlighted Harris's immigrant upbringing as a testament to American values and underscored the need to prioritize unity and optimism.
And let us choose optimism over cynicism, because that's the best of America. And let us choose inclusion over retribution. Let us choose common sense over nonsense. Because that's the best of America.
At the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this week, Palestinian families affected by Israel's war were not given a platform to speak. However, the parents of Hirsch Goldberg Polin, an American-Israeli prisoner held in Gaza, were provided a platform. Protests erupted outside the United Center, led by delegates and activists demanding that the Palestinian side of the story also be heard. Among the demonstrators were healthcare workers, Chicago Teachers Union members, and progressive Congresswomen Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar. The dissent culminated in a sit-in by 7 delegates who vowed to remain until their demands for speaking time were met. Bush and Omar criticized the party's stance on Palestinian rights and called for a ceasefire in Gaza. Bush, who recently lost her primary following attacks from Israeli groups, accused them of being a pro-genocide lobby. Omar and other activists challenged the U.S. government's hypocrisy, questioning how it could advocate for peace while supplying arms to Israel. The DNC rejected the request for a speaking slot. Israeli attacks have killed 42 Palestinians and injured 163 others in Gaza in the last 24 hours. According to medical officials, 22 people have been killed since Thursday morning. An Israeli airstrike on a residential building in the northern Gaza town of Beit Lahia killed at least 11 people. Another Israeli attack on a school, which was serving as a shelter on Salah ad-Din Highway in northern Gaza, killed 4 people. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or UNRWA, also lamented what it called a horrific attack on another school that had been turned into an emergency shelter in the north of Gaza City. Israel has killed at least 40,265 Palestinians and wounded roughly 93,144 in its war on Gaza since last October. However, according to a report in the British medical journal The Lancet published last month, the death toll could exceed 186,000. The International Court of Justice has accused Israel of genocide against the Palestinians of Gaza. In a powerful display of solidarity, Palestinian journalists took to the streets of Khan Yunis in Gaza on Wednesday, protesting Israeli strikes targeting the press. The demonstration follows the recent death of Hamza Murtaja, a journalist killed in an Israeli airstrike on Gaza City. This incident has pushed the death toll of journalists in Gaza to 170 since last October. The attack, which struck the Mustafa Hafiz school, which was housing displaced civilians, also killed 12 others and injured dozens. The Palestinian Media Office in Gaza has urged international bodies to hold Israel accountable for its actions. Police in Chicago clashed with journalists during Free-Palestine protests outside the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this week. Footage captured the chaos, with riot police forcibly removing demonstrators and journalists. Anadolu News Agency video journalist Mustafa Basim reported aggressive intimidation by police. He faced threats to have his press credentials revoked, a tactic he claims was used to limit journalists' access. Freelance journalist Josh Pacheco, who has worked with the New York Times, PBS, and Forbes, was one of at least 3 credentialed journalists arrested. The situation escalated on Tuesday night outside the Israeli consulate in Chicago's West Loop Gate neighborhood, where clashes erupted between protesters and police. Basim and other journalists were targeted with multiple arrests, including those of press members. Trump warns against World War III. Details after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump asserted that major global conflicts would have been averted under his leadership. He was speaking in Asheboro, North Carolina on Wednesday at his first outdoor rally since a July assassination attempt on him. Trump addressed supporters from behind bulletproof glass. He claimed that both the Russia-Ukraine war and Israel's war in Palestine would not have occurred if he were still in office. Trump argued that his presidency ensured global stability and warned that the risk of a third world war would rise if he is not elected.
We secured our borders, we achieved energy independence, we stood up to China, we protected Israel, we made peace in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords, and more. We did things like nobody ever heard of, and we brought our troops mostly back home. I stopped wars with phone calls. Russia should have never happened. With Ukraine, would have never happened if I were president. Would have never happened. Nope, there was no talk of that. Would have never, ever happened with Putin. Would have never happened. And Israel, October 7th, would have never happened. Iran would have never done that. They had very little money at that point. Now they're rich as hell. But Biden allowed that to happen. And Kamala, where's Biden? What happened to Biden? Where is he? You're a little worried about a certain person winning the election. We had some very good polls today. And if that happens, you're not going to have any third world wars. Every American was safer under President Trump. In fact, the entire world was safer when I sat behind that beautiful, resolute desk in the Oval Office.
American doctors who recently volunteered in Gaza say the Israeli military is deliberately shooting children in the head. Speaking at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this week, these doctors urged the Biden administration to halt arms shipments to Israel. Dr. Firoz Sidwa, who served at the European hospital in Khan Yunis, described Gaza as a disaster zone and reported witnessing Israel's daily targeted attacks on children. Dr. Tammy Abu Ghanem, also a volunteer, revealed 60 to 70% of injured patients in her care were children, emphasizing the severe impact of the conflict. Both doctors called for an end to U.S. support for Israel, demanding American tax dollars not fund what they describe as deliberate violence against civilians. Speaking to reporters after the conference, the doctors emphasized what they saw in Gaza was nothing short of horrific and massive destruction. The United States annually gives Israel over $3 billion in primarily military assistance. In April, President Joe Biden signed into law $14.3 billion in additional emergency security assistance for Israel. A former attorney for the far-right group the Oathkeepers has pleaded guilty to charges related to the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Kelly Sorrell admitted to obstructing justice and unlawfully entering a restricted area. She faces up to 16 months in prison. Her sentencing is set for January 17th. Sorrell, who had been mentally incompetent to stand trial until recently, was arrested in 2022. She was previously involved in a 2020 meeting with extremist leaders. Although she did not enter the U.S. Capitol, Sorrell played a role in delaying the certification of the Electoral College vote. Her guilty plea comes as John Banuelos, who is charged with firing a gun during the January 6 attack, faces trial with pretrial detention. That was upheld due to flight risk and public safety concerns. Former U.S. Army paratrooper Stuart Rhodes, who founded the Oathkeepers in 2009, is serving an 18-year prison sentence. This is for orchestrating a plot to keep Donald Trump in the White House after the 2020 presidential election. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, who is currently serving a prison sentence, is aiming for a prestigious new role, Chancellor of Oxford University. Despite being incarcerated for more than a year on charges he says are politically motivated, Khan is reported to have submitted his application for the position. The Chancellor role is largely symbolic and decided by Oxford graduates and academic staff. An honorary fellow of Oxford's Keble College, where he studied in 1972, Khan's bid was confirmed by his advisor on social media. The university has not yet commented on the application or the candidates, with voting set for October 28. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. Your support is needed now more than ever to continue our mission of providing informative, educational, and inspiring content to Muslims in North America and around the world. Donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.